So the only question is, can this sense of I that appears in the mind, can it be sincere enough to actually investigate itself? If you notice, you see that this sense of I is investigating what it calls reality. It investigates outside of itself. It investigates the circumstances, its own sensations, its own feelings, its own thoughts, but it never investigates its own essence, its own reality, what it truly is. What is it made of? What is the reality of this one that looks, that observes, that thinks, that decides, that acts? It is this constant blind spot that creates this feeling that something is wrong. But it is wrong where? It is wrong not here. It is wrong in the interpretation of this looker. This looker is already interpreting this moment. It is not able to look at this moment. Mind cannot see what is here. It cannot really see it. It is too present. It is too complete. Mind is looking from its own definitions, from its own knowledge, from its own conceptions. And therefore, when it looks upon this moment, it already creates an interpretation here. And then in this interpretation, which it is not aware that it has created, it finds all the problems that we find in life. It starts to fight it, or it wants to achieve something. But achieve where? Or fight what? See, this is what needs to be observed. It is not seen that it happens in the interpretation of the mind itself. It is not happening in reality as it is. Because the problem of the mind is that it cannot actually touch upon reality with its own knowledge. Reality is a mystery, it is whole, it is what we truly are. Mind is a function, it is just a machinery, it is a beautiful machinery, a creative one, but it is not able to grasp something which is bigger than it is. It is not able to understand its own source. It creates its own interpretation to cover this because it is afraid of that which it cannot know. Because what is here is just too big to be understood. So mind is not able to actually touch upon it. And there is a sense of fear which is covered by these interpretations. That's how we find whatever we find in our lives, all the struggles, all the problems. It all begins with this sense of I am here first, I am here as something. And this I is not seen as an interpretation already. And in front of this I, there is the interpretation of life. Because this I only sees what it interprets as life in accordance to its own image, accordance to its own idea. That's why we always find what we already think, feel, and perceive of ourselves. When mind thinks that it is an object, when we think that we are the object, we are confined in the body, or we are confined in our personality, then we see everywhere we see this. We think that everyone is this object, everyone is inside this form, inside this body. Because whatever mind creates about itself, whatever it interprets about its own existence, it finds everywhere. It cannot see anything else, because it never looks upon reality. It looks upon what it interprets. It looks upon what it creates as reality, to mirror its own image. And so this is the only thing that actually should be investigated very deeply. Because the moment mind sees itself as what it truly is, as a thought, at this moment there is clarity. Suddenly there is just what is here, and it is not defined. It is just what is. It is not good, not bad. It is not this or other. So the problem here is that mind is actually afraid of of meeting this reality when it is not defined, when it cannot know it, it cannot put it in some definition. So the only thing we can do is to reach this point when mind is actually mature, that it is not afraid anymore of that which it cannot know. Then we can start to meet reality as it is. Then those moments where mind becomes really silent, when it sees itself as only a thought, and suddenly there is this, which is undefinable. When the mind is mature, it is no longer triggering fear, and therefore it is not triggering the defensive mechanisms of the mind to again create itself, recreate itself as another image. And in this spontaneous moment when mind is not reacting through fear, this reality can suddenly, spontaneously recognize itself without this external observer, just directly as it is right now. Because you see, this moment is already now knowing itself. That's the paradox here. No matter what you think, what you do, there is existence knowing itself right now. It has nothing to do with what the mind creates. It is completely free. It is simply here. So mind has to be sincere enough to actually see how it adds up to this, its own interpretations, its own ideas, its own concepts, and then it responds to them. It doesn't respond to this. It responds to its own creations. It responds to its own interpretations of reality. And it creates those interpretations because there is fear of that which it cannot know. So this chain of events has to be deeply investigated. Investigated doesn't mean you have to think about it. There just needs to be awareness about it. Because it already takes place. Mind is constantly doing this. This is how it functions. So this is happening in a kind of darkness. There is no awareness of this process. And that is actually all that is necessary, just to light this process. Because when mind sees itself as it truly is, when this condition is understood correctly, then actually mind can redeem itself, free itself, only by understanding its own reality, not by reaching what it looks for, not by searching truth, not by searching anything, just by having clarity about itself. That's the only thing that is missing. Because in life, we seem to think that problems are caused by something external, and then mind tries to find the solution there. And then we come to the search, and we think that if we find what we call truth or liberation, then we will be okay. And again, mind looks for something, for some remedy, while it is not aware that it itself is the cause of the suffering. And by looking, he keeps itself as the looker. By searching, it keeps itself as the searcher. Wherever it looks, it will always find itself behind. So it is only this sincerity to look upon itself, to investigate its own reality, that actually allows salvation for mind. Because if you look at your experience right now, even the idea that you are this body is not your experience. If you truly listen now without interpreting, you see how your mind creates this I am this body. The body is experience, yes. The sensations of the body are experienced, but the body, there is no experience that I am the body. It is not an experience, it is added by the mind. It is already interpreting I am this body. There is simply presence here, conscious presence, and whatever you do, you can see that this conscious presence is the only constant throughout life. you have never experienced any moment without being conscious. Everything else changes. Experiences, shapes, forms, ideas, but everything that can be experienced is experienced because there is conscious presence here. So to let this conscious presence just be itself without mind covering it up by any interpretation is necessary. In order for this to happen, mind first has to realize what it does. It has to become aware of its own movements, how it actually covers this, how it constantly covers what is here by its own ideas. You see, this moment knows itself already. Now, this moment is knowing itself through each and every one, what appears to be each and every one. But this knowledge is, for the mind, is not enough. It has to say something about it, define it somehow. There is something added to this. It is never alone. It is never just what it is. Something has to be added up. And mind is not aware that by adding this, it actually traps itself. Because the moment this is interpreted in some way, the moment you think, I am something, any kind of reference, body reference, memory reference, any experiences, at this moment, your reality is a complete mirror of this. Then you see reality through this interpretation. Then something appears in accordance to this interpretation, and you start to feel this contraction that you know from life. Something needs to happen. I need to do something. I need to find something. Something is missing. There is a problem somewhere. Some kind of lack is there. Imperfection. It is always relative already. Because any interpretation is relative. It is confined. It is limited. And mind doesn't see that by letting this moment be itself, it can actually rest. It doesn't need to create this confinement, which it then tries to fix. This is why we cannot perceive this magnificence that is here, because it is already defined, it is already compared to something, it is already relative through the mind's perspective. It is basically functional. Mind looks upon reality as something functional, because it thinks itself to be an object, so reality is also an object. And then between the two there is only the question of how I can use it to my benefit. And here this constant hunger to complete something, the lack of something, because if I'm an object and reality is another object, then there is a constant dialogue. Perfection cannot be realized. The beauty, the mystery of everything cannot be realized. So mind has to see this, that it actually creates this prison for itself by interpreting. At first it doesn't see, that's why at first we look externally for solutions, because mind believes that it can somehow redeem itself, somehow free itself through finding the right combination of something in life. But eventually it sees that it's impossible. Wherever it goes, it brings itself. Wherever it goes, no matter what it does, any experience is ending, and it is always left with its own struggle, its own conflict, its own lack. So when this is realized truly, then there is the possibility of actually investigating the real cause of this all. The mind is, when mind has gone through this journey of looking for solutions in life and seeing that it is not there, then it is ready to actually become aware of itself as it moves, as it interprets, as it creates reality as its own concept.
Does it mean that the movement of making the life of this body better, so-called, contradicts this investigation?
The question is, who is making his life better? You see, behind everything that is done, there is already this interpretation of you as the doer. Action will always take place. Life is action. So there is no question about acting. Acting takes place. See, the body moves, the body speaks, everything takes place. The question is, who is this one that is behind this movement, that feels that this is his life and he is doing this? Yeah? This one is not being investigated. This one is not aware of itself. Everything happens already in complete silence of being. It doesn't need this interpretator, the narrator. But somehow mind has so much created itself as this narrator that it is really afraid to see that life goes on without it, that it is not necessary as this entity, as this I. So this unconscious fear has to be surfaced. It has to become conscious first, so that mind can mature and at some point allow this without translating this as a threat. You see, because it is now translating this moment, if it is free of it, if it is free of its interpretations, as a threat.
There's nothing really. Like it feels like if there won't be this thing, then nothing will happen.
Exactly. You see, it's now the question is, can you see that this is an interpretation? This is not what is. You see, the sincere
impression is that nothing will
Yes.
happen is an interpretation.
Yes, it is an interpretation. You see,
Yeah.
that has to be seen. Then there is trust available. Then there a possible trust coming. Because when this is not seen as interpretation, then you just leave it. Then mind closes this door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is fear from, like,
Yeah.
nothing will happen is fear.
Yes, nothing will happen, or I am nothing,
Yeah.
or I will die in this. Yeah, or there is no meaning, for example. There are many variations how the mind is resisting this seeing of itself as it truly is.
To keep going.
Yes, it has to recreate itself at any cost. So that's why only when this deep sincerity comes, and this readiness to actually expose all these games, how the mind recreates itself constantly, then this becomes possible. Then there is trust, you see. Then there is not so much fear. And then this moment can simply be allowed to be as it is, alone.
In this moment, it's beyond mind, you would say, or?
You are this moment. And yes, it is beyond mind. This is why mind cannot actually understand it. The whole which we are, the whole of this moment, it is bigger than any part. And mind is coming out of this source, of this beingness, of this conscious beingness. So it cannot understand that which is bigger than it. It cannot understand that in which it is contained. And there must be maturity coming to the mind that it can accept this and not interfere. Then there is trust, then this mind can keep quiet.
Who is the one that gives up the mind? Is it the mind gives up on itself in the end, or?
There is no question really of giving up. There is only the question of of mind willing to see itself for what it truly is, to actually expose its own reality.
So it's not the higher intelligence that exposes the mind for what it is, it's the mind itself?
That which is here is already knowing itself, but somehow, because the mind is interpreting this moment, all attention is bound in this interpretation. So when mind becomes suddenly silent and transparent, when it agrees not to interfere, when it sees that it is interpreting and it actually trusts enough not to interpret, then suddenly this reality which we are spontaneously sees itself, we can say, in the mirror of the quiet mind. But when the mind is not quiet, then it is not mirroring what is here, it is mirroring its own interpretations, and it is in that we are caught. So there is no question of finding reality, of finding truth, of however mind creates concepts about it. There is only the need to realize, to become clear of what mind is. That mind agrees to actually see itself for what it truly is. This by itself makes it silent. There is no question of giving up. You see, when the dream is seen as a dream, it is no longer a dream. So in the same way, when the mind sees itself as a thought, truly sees, not thinks itself and creates itself behind it as the thinker, but truly seeing this, it dissolves by the very seeing. And actually this can happen right now. The only thing is that when it happens, if mind is afraid, then instantly it will recreate itself again as another point of view which looks upon this experience. For example, it can say, oh, I have seen. Oh, yes, this is beautiful. Oh, this is... Immediately it recreates itself as the looker, as another point of view. So these games, these movements of mind, they just need to be seen, they just need to be exposed. There is no need of doing anything, just being aware of what is already happening inside, what is already happening in the mind, how it functions, how it moves, how it creates reality, you see. If you notice, you see, when you look upon something, it appears like you're looking at the reality of it. But if you investigate, you see you are already looking at an interpretation. And when this can be seen, then silence comes to the mind. It realizes there is only silence then. There is what before was some kind of object, some kind of knowledge. The mind had many notions about it, many memories about it, many emotions about it. Suddenly it is just itself, it is pure, it is unknowable, it is just what is. And the question is, can we see it just how it truly is? Because this is already the case. Everything simply is. Can the mind look at it without adding anything? Just allowing everything to be as it already is. You see, it is so beautiful, but somehow mind is tense. Mind is tense about it, because it feels that like it is disappearing in this, as the interpreter, as the observer. And there are many emotions attached to this observer, because we have been cultivating this throughout life. So there is plenty of weight to this observer. So that's why this invitation is not immediately taken, first all these emotions that are stirred, all these fears, they need to be seen. Because what the mind is really afraid of, this is already its own source. It is already arising from this all the time. So can the mind see that its own fear is another interpretation? There is nothing to be afraid. Every night it is putting itself in the hands of God. We can say, yes, it is just releasing itself. No question about it. And it is not controlling anything. It is not controlling the fact that it will wake in the morning, for example. It is completely surrendering. So why not now? Why this neurotic need to add, to define, to control, to create the sense of I'm here, I'm the controller, I'm the doer? Can the mind actually see this for what it truly is? See this movement? Investigate inside its own movement, see clearly what it is, that it is just a thought. This is not what is here, this is not the case. Can the mind see that it is not looking upon reality, it is looking upon itself, upon its own ideas? Just notice how the tension is created. You see, this, whatever takes place right now is already taking place. There is awareness happening by itself. All movement that happens. There is awareness and movement as one all the time. Now look what mind is doing. It is creating something static in this I, in this constant movement of life. And this point which it draws is creating, of course, conflict with this movement. It has to somehow fit itself. And no matter what it does, no matter how much effort it puts, it cannot fit itself, because this movement is too much. It is constantly moving, everything is changing. It can never predict, it can never fit itself perfectly, so there is always tension. So this function of mind has to be seen in this pure movement, which is constantly aware of itself. There is this somehow static point, like a frozen object, this idea I. And then the conflict with life begins. From this moment, life is no longer what it is, this movement. It is under this effort of the mind to somehow grasp it and match it to its own idea. So it could be okay with it. So this can never be resolved unless there is clarity about this very movement of mind.
So in the experience there is awareness now and objects, you would say, or movements, objects or movements, I don't know how to...
Basically there is just conscious being, yes?
Mm-hmm.
When you realize yourself as this conscious being, and when your mind doesn't add anything to this, then you no longer perceive objects as objects. You see, because you don't see them as separate from yourself, you see.
Oh.
It is because you think that you are a point
of awareness.
Something, yeah, some object, then you perceive everything in relation to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it is only this point of I am something that needs to be investigated, because everything else is a direct outcome of this. The moment this is seen as what it truly is, it dissolves. And then the all of your reality, the whole perception of reality changes. mind has to reach this maturity, this sincerity, in which it actually has no interest anymore to have any experience in particular, so that its attention is directed to itself. It realizes that this is the only thing that matters to see. So it no longer so easily gets lost in experiences, because it finds no interest there so much anymore. It has already realized that it is trapped in itself. So it is just looking at itself, investigating its own movements. Can we be just experience what is taking place now without any expectation, any interpretation of any kind? That's the question. Can we allow this to happen? And if there is any movement that is added to this, can we just see it? Can it just be seen in a very simple way? Without any motive to do anything about it, to fight it. Just let it be seen. Just clarity, that's all that needed. Only clarity. When light enters a dark room, there is no fight, you see. Darkness is not fighting. It is simply dissolving by itself, as if it never was there. So that's all that is needed, this light of our own, directed to this very, very deep-rooted sense of I. There is nothing that prevents the seeing. This is important to see. There is nothing that prevents the seeing. It can be seen right now. Because we are already this light. This presence which is aware of itself is already this light. Nothing prevents the seeing. The only question is, do we really want this? That's because sometimes we think we want, but actually we want something else. And then we are confused. For example, one of the biggest traps is probably mind says to itself, yes, I want to find truth, I want to see truth, but what it actually wants is to escape suffering. Because usually we come to the search from suffering. Because we suffer and we want to be relieved, which is very natural. But as long as there is this desire to escape suffering, mind will recreate itself as the one that wants to escape suffering. It doesn't want to see itself, because then it dissolves. To escape suffering, mind is creating its own identity through this. It is creating itself as the sufferer. So, if this is what we want, then when this is offered to actually see it, then mind will resist. It wants to be there as this I, as the center that will experience the relief from suffering. So all these motives which are usually uncovered, they're unconscious, they need to be seen. And when there is truly the desire to face the reality of this I, then really there is nothing that prevents it. It can be seen here and now. So if there is any other motive, or if you're unsure what is the motive, then we can investigate together and expose it and see if there is any other motive. Because truly, there is nothing that prevents the seeing.
How would you investigate the motive?
Well, when you express your motive, however you understand it, yes, then we can look at it together and see maybe there is something that is uncovered there.
I'm not sure what is the motive, but the reality is that I'm not, even though, let's say, it has seen that it doesn't exist, it's not coming back like what you're saying, to re-clarify itself. It's going, it keeps going into to life, to everyday activities. There's a feeling that it's needed. Or,
Yes.
I'm not sure. I'm not
So-
sure why. So I would.
Mhm. So if I would ask you, what do you really want, then what
Yeah.
would you say to me?
The first thing that comes is love.
Yes, yes. So now you see now, who is this one that needs love? This is a kind of an escape, because love is a remedy for something, you see. Anything that we want is a remedy for something which we feel that is missing. So
For some kind of lack.
yes, but isn't this lack already an interpretation of how you define yourself? Perfect.
It's like there's a fear of letting go of it all. Let's say.
Yes,
Of this world, in some way you can say, of wanting things, of playing this game.
if the mind wants to keep playing the game, then it's okay. But you see, then it will not be ready to dissolve the game by the seeing of itself, because it realizes that when the seeing happens,
Sure.
then this game is dissolving. Now, if it still wants to play, naturally it will resist us.
Yeah.
But when you say, for example, that you want love, yes,
Okay.
then who is the one for whom love is lacking, you see? This needs to be seen.
This is only after I'm already in the game and I'm playing
Yes.
all day. This is like
Because you see, this is the interpretation of you which
Yeah.
is not
Yes.
coming to light. That I'm something that needs what I call love. And if you even go deeper, you will see that what you call love is another kind of escape from suffering, from where you look, from where you ask, you see. It is there that your light is needed, when simple awareness is needed. From where are you inquiring for love? From which point of view? What is this point of view which asks for love? What is this eye that looks upon the world and finds that it needs something from it, yes? How does this come into being? Can you investigate this very sense of I, which is already an interpretation, you see?
Yeah.
It happens very fast, but if there is a true sincerity, there is nothing that prevents the mind from seeing this. It will constantly see this happening, and by the seeing, it will dissolve in this clarity of its own light. It will dissolve in the seeing itself. See, this moment is already immense beauty. Whatever takes place, just as it takes place, everything happens on its own. This is a moment of self-awareness. You see, this knowingness, this beingness simply knows itself. But when mind tries to look upon it, it cannot see it, because this doesn't hold any answer for the meanings that the mind has put in its interpretation of life. See, this is, for the mind, is meaningless. This experience of beingness, of conscious beingness, is being ignored by the mind because it is meaningless for it. It is filtering this. It only looks through its own filters. It already has some ideas what is meaningful. And it only looks for that. It doesn't realize that it has actually put it there. So what is already here, what is already free from its interpretation, what is simply unconditionally present here, is simply not seen. Because for the mind it is meaningless. It is either meaningless or it is even threatening. Because it is empty, because it is boring. But can the mind investigate and see from where does it sprout?
Experience itself, you mean? Or
Can it see that this perception is already, because it has created its own idea of what is here, and it is actually living this, it is reacting to this, it is responding to this.
I have a question. When I look at this eye that I know so well, yes, the image, then there is a feeling like it knows itself. Okay, it knows its the body, it knows things from the senses, it knows its own history and its liking, disliking. Okay, there is some, seems to be some knowledge about itself. Okay, if you are not looking from the eye, when you let go of the eye, because you understand that it's only is there the same knowing from the place that is real? Like, is this place able to know itself?
Why don't you find out? You see, mind wants to reassure itself, so I must be kept. My position must be safe. Then, okay, I'm ready to do anything. I'm ready to die, I'm ready to awaken, but I must be left there to experience this. You see, this is the game.
I'm asking this because, yes, it's correct, but before when you were speaking, then for a slight second that I felt something without filtering through the eye. And then suddenly there was fear, and there is like,
Yes.
oh, will I know anything? Will I?
Yes. This fear is exactly the protective mechanism of the mind. Just be aware of this mechanism taking place. When this mechanism is lit up, when there is light, that this is a mechanism, you see it, it is seen, then there will slowly come a trust. Then you will start to trust this moment as it is, and not only your own interpretations. So when this trust comes, then mind will be able to remain silent and not add to this. Then this reality shines by itself. Suddenly there's whatever mind was looking at as something banal, something boring, something known, it is something suddenly an incredible miracle, as it truly is. Everything is. Then you can just sit and you can look at the wall or whatever for and you never feel that there is something lacking, because everything is revealed as a complete mystery, a living conscious mystery. It is no longer appearing to you as an object, as a piece of knowledge basically in front of another piece of knowledge which you think yourself to be. Suddenly all these borders dissolve and everything is simply itself, a complete mystery, just what is. But for this mind has to trust. There must be trust. Otherwise, what you have described happens. Very quickly these defensive mechanisms operate and you find yourself resisting, covering up, judging, anyway, just going away from this and going back to your own little contracted interpretations.
What you said before, if you're looking for something, if you want to end your suffering. It's not a good. It's not a good place to be, because if you already want something from reality, then you're already distorting what is. This is what you mean.
In order to escape suffering, there must be somebody there that is the sufferer. And this sufferer wants to keep its identity as the sufferer and enjoy the relief of suffering. So you see, it's another game. So it will not be able to accept this invitation of looking at itself and dissolving itself by that looking, because then its very joyful game is taken away from it. It wants to keep its game, it wants to keep this identity, unconsciously, of course. That's why people enjoy suffering, why they keep themselves in suffering. Because in this suffering, they are still somebody. They can still enjoy this game through being this identity of a sufferer. That's why only when mind is really mature, when there is the real fire of truth, then mind can actually be ready to be burnt in its own light, in its own clarity. Then it can really investigate itself and see what it truly is. It is no longer playing a game to keep itself as something. It just wants to be clear about what is here, what am I. So this is why it is so rare, because many of us come to the search because we suffer, and then we are stuck in this place where we are the sufferers, and we want to enjoy this urge to relieve the suffering slowly, playing this game. But to really dissolve itself, there is not enough intensity yet. Because mind is so used to look as if outside of itself. It is not ready to constantly turn upon itself. This demands a lot of energy. And it is only when mind is full of this fire of inquiry that it is able to constantly do this.
What happens when I've been experiencing what you described, of this mind with this intensity of looking. It was burning me for a few years, and this intensity dissolved itself. I don't feel that. That I have to go again and again and again to look. At first I was surprised to lose this fighter inside that was so wanting it, the truth. Constantly, every day. And now, usually what I feel is that I'm lacking some kind of a trance constantly.
You're what?
Of trance.
Yes.
And I have a glimpse of
Yes.
remembering. Coming randomly. There is no control over it. I mean, it's just like... And I haven't been trying to find this fire. I felt it's gone. I don't know what to do with it, It's like...
Yes.
I don't feel the seeking.
And where are you speaking from now? Are you aware of the speaker? Is it seeing itself as real, or is it seeing itself as a construct of thought? As it speaks, as it thinks.
No, it's not seen as a construct of thought.
Yes. The question is, can this speaker, as it speaks, as it moves, can it investigate itself? But you see, this investigation is not coming of effort. It is just being seen. When it comes through effort, it already means there is somebody there
Trying something.
trying, and then this tiring comes. You burn yourself. Because this I that constantly tries and tries and tries, you cannot keep it up, it just burns itself, the energy is depleted. But this seeing, you see, this seeing is not coming from this sense of achieving something, of the effort to look, to see. The effort is only to find something, you see. Seeing by itself just look at take the example of how your eyes are now looking. They're just looking, you see, there is no effort there. When you want to focus on an object, then eyes are focusing, there is an effort. But the very seeing is just happening. You're just seeing. The senses are just operating, just by themselves. See, no effort here. So in the same way, can mind, as it moves, as it speaks, as it thinks, see its own movements as they are, having clarity about itself, but not in order to achieve anything. That's the catch. Not to look at itself in order to reach anything.
But how to know?
When now you are pointed to, aren't you simply aware of speech happening, of thinking happening? You see, it is. So it is not a question of how at all. It is just a question of attention. See, when you are pointed to, it is naturally seen. But when you are not pointed to, it is not seen because there is a focus on something else. That's the only thing that happens. Something out there is more interesting than this. You see, when I point you to this, it is seen naturally. You don't need to make any effort. It is simply seen. But then you go outside and something becomes.
Constantly forget.
Yes, because something is more attractive, catching your attention, realizing the importance of clarity about itself. You see, so the whole values are changing in that. It doesn't so much look for anything. And when it stops looking, naturally it starts to see itself. Because attention becomes free.
Things are just happening, being trapped in a dream or seeing it suddenly having this movement like
Yes.
backwards and sometimes it's microsecond, it's just moving from.
Can we look together now? Why are you actually at all being trapped in the experiences outwardly? Can you see it? There is some kind of search there, some kind of interest there. What is catching you? Why is it catching you? What is there that you are actually looking? What mind wants in the world? What is it looking for? Why is it so attentive to the environment, you see? What is it looking for? What is it expecting to find there?
I guess it's the way I know how to function.
No, you see, functioning is very simple. Functioning is very, very simple. Functioning takes care of itself. Mm-hmm. Just like in the body functions perfectly, and you are not even aware of what happens inside. But isn't there a desire to function properly, for example? Isn't there a kind of anxiety that you will not function properly? Just observe it very carefully, because functioning is okay already, but there might be some concept about how you should function.
I don't see nothing.
Mm-hmm. You're not worried about how you will function at all? Everything you do, you see, it is there.
I've been very dysfunctional the past years.
You see,
I've been worried a lot
Yes,
about that
yes.
because things went so off that
you see,
On point.
just look how the mind creates an interpretation of you, how you should function, and there is the possible fear of how you may function. There is almost always an emotion attached to the sense I. Some kind of emotion, some kind of color, some kind of taste. It is not clear, it is not pure. You see? Because this beingness here now, it has no color. It is all colors, it is just light, it's just self-knowing. There is no need for an emotion, because an emotion is always just some kind of partial color. So whenever we perceive ourselves through this memory of I, through this idea of I, there is some kind of emotion there already. Maybe subtle, maybe gross, but there is some kind of emotion there already.
In the body. When you say emotion, you mean sensation.
Well, emotion is always experienced in
Yeah.
the body, yes.
Everything you know yourself to be is not yourself.
You're the knowing itself. You're the witnessing.
So you cannot really know yourself, you can just be.
You can never know yourself because you're not a fixed point. But a living thing cannot be known. A being cannot be known. It is not a thing. It's not an object.
So what is all, like this? There is, even if
Yes.
this is movement and not solid, there is still a sensation of something or. Right?
But be careful. See, this sensation is already translated.
Mm-hmm.
It is already interpreted. You see. Then you cannot simply be aware of this as just an appearance. It is an appearance.
Mm-hmm.
It is appearing in your awareness, which you are. It is appearing in consciousness.
So this is not a thing that, like you know.
Mind cannot understand it. That's the thing. Because mind is coming to this kind of point, it cannot understand it
Mhm.
as what it is, as beingness. Then it creates it as an object. It creates it as a definition, and then it reacts to it emotionally as a definition. And therefore, all you see in life is this.
That's the projection you were talking about before.
Yes.
So beingness and beingness, awareness also, like that's what you mean.
Now, if you pay attention, you see mind is already trying to grasp it through this.
Mm-hmm.
It's already making it a concept, like this beingness and this is a beingness.
Okay.
Because it simply cannot find it, it cannot see it.
Mm-hmm.
It can only find it when it is silent. That's why the only thing that needs to happen is mind seeing this very movement of trying to understand, trying to define, and by this very seeing, dissolving in silence.
I have a question. Just what he said, like these moments, really it feels like a jumping back, or I don't know how to describe it, something I feel like, or there's a feeling of the wonder, so like just this
Yes.
no understanding, but a lot of just
Yes.
amazement of just this thing being alive,
Yes.
being alive. Okay?
Just let it breathe. Yes.
Yeah.
Let
But-
it leave it alone.
Yes, and then there is I don't feel it so much as fear, but the mind is becoming interested in many other things.
Yes.
After like this, it can be really a split second, or a few seconds, or a minute, and I feel like for me it's like the interest, a lot of what you said, like about control, about how I function and
Yes.
things I want to achieve and the way I want to act and things I don't want to act,
Yes.
all this. So,
Just realize who is this one that is afraid of being dysfunctional or wants to function a proper way. Who is this? See, this is the blind spot. If this is being ignored, anything else, it doesn't matter anymore. It is already going on. This story is
There's,
going on. There are emotions for each of these
a lot of emotion.
interpretations, and they are flowing into other emotions, other interpretations. The root of it all is this interpretation of you. This is the moment which we are not seeing. The mind is not looking there. It is really hiding from itself. It is not looking at itself, creating this sense of I, the interpretation of what I am. It is afraid to find out that what it is just this. It is not able to understand, to grasp, to hold on to it. So it is like a protective mechanism just to create itself as something from your past experiences, from your past knowledge, and then function from it. I just want to point something out in your experience. The sensation of emotion comes only after there is the conceptual structure of Eli.
Mm-hmm.
It is a response to this structure, to this interpretation, you see. Whenever anything is interpreted by the mind,
Mm-hmm.
then emotion comes in response to that interpretation.
There is a thought and then there is a
Yes.
emotion.
So when Eli arises, the interpretation Eli arises,
Mm-hmm.
then this emotion comes.
Mm-hmm.
So can mind follow the very arisal, the very arising of this interpretation Eli? The answer is it can, you see, it can. You can be sure of that. Only thing is it interested in? Because there must be fire there.
To go to see.
Because it happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a habit of looking through Eli, through the filter Eli,
Mm-hmm.
at what you call reality, but basically at the interpretation of Eli as reality. And getting lost in that reality. Being drawn by something, or fighting something, or resisting something, or attracting something. But the very arising of this Eli, can mind follow this? Just be aware of this.
Yeah.
In a very, very simple, pure way.
Yeah.
Without trying to do anything about it. It is not in order to kill it, or to destroy it. It is not in order to change it. It is just to see what it is. Just to be aware of this arising. That is all. For this, just interest is needed. Because whatever in life you are drawn to because there is interest, like you spoke about photography. Something is there, it draws you because there is interest. When there is interest in this, when mind is interested in clarity about itself, then this starts to happen. And you will find out, suddenly you will have much more energy. At the beginning it may be a little bit tiring, it may be intense, but then the whole system will be in tune with that seeing, with that revealing, with that consistent exposing of this.
And clarity is only when it is seen,
Yes.
and otherwise there is something.
Otherwise
Yes.
you are already looking through this.
Yeah.
Through this so you're already looking at your own interpretation.
So
The interpreter has to be seen.
and then there is clarity.
Yes.
And then there is this sense
Yes,
of
then there is
being
this
and
sense
wonder.
of wonder. Then you're looking like, you can say, like a child. Yes. There is no interpretation of anything. It is just a wonder. Just what is, you see. It is not compared suddenly. It is not compared to anything. It is not in relation to anything. It is simply itself.
Mhm.
So whenever you look through the mind, it is already in comparison. It is already boring, you see. Infinitely boring, infinitely banal. Because it's already just something in comparison to something else. The essence of what is appearing here is not seen.
And if it's like that, then there is something now that is not seen. Or there is something.
What is here is not seen.
Yeah.
The very nature of you and the reality is not seen, is not experienced. You are not consciously being that. You see, you are it anyway, but you're not consciously being it because you are somehow interpreting yourself through the mind projections. You see? In any case, you are this reality. You are this conscious presence, which is simply itself. It is always free from the boundaries of mind, from its interpretations. But as long as you are believing these interpretations, you are lost in these interpretations, you simply cannot enjoy and experience this magnificence as it truly is. Somehow you're looking at it through this tiny keyhole of this filter,
Now,
believing that you're seeing reality.
a question like who is lost, who is looking through this, or what? No?
Just let mind see itself, and it will all become clear by itself. It will just clear away. So you just let this looker be exposed. This observer, this one that thinks that he is here and life is in front of him. You see these two appearing in the mind, this I and this existence appearing as two.
Existence, it can be anything, sensations, and
You see, existence is already the case. Life, beingness, which is conscious of itself, is already the case. But there is no two here. It is just itself. It is living itself, conscious of itself, without looking at itself externally. See, mind cannot understand this because mind functions, we can say, linearly. If something is seen, there must be someone who looks at it. So this is dimension which mind cannot understand. So it has to be clear about how it veils this. Then that which is greater than it, that in which it is contained, that from which it rises, is recognized. Suddenly it's recognized. And mind remains quiet. It doesn't have anything to say about it. It's, you see, it can never understand it.
yeah, I don't understand.
Yes. It is only this fighting goes on as long as mind somehow believes that it can grasp it. So it believes that it's actually the one that exists is this concept, I. Basically the mind thinks that it is the controller, it is the one that is looking at this reality, and so therefore it has to grasp it, understand it, control it, and so forth. It's not ready to actually dissolve itself by seeing the truth of itself, because it wants to remain the last one, or you can say the first one, the one that is in charge. If you're not reflecting upon any memory of yourself, any past experience, then what are you right now? Just see, it is so direct. If there is no reflection, if you're not looking to define yourself through any past knowledge, any experience, then what is here? What is simply here? Simply present, simply conscious. It's already happening on its own. There is no effort here, there is no control here. Can mind not be afraid of this, you see? That it is not in control of this, you see? It is happening already. Existence happens already. It is not in control, it is not making it happen. Can mind reveal, expose its own trap, this illusion that it is behind everything, that it is in control? It is because it believes it is in control that it constantly tries to make things happen a certain way, measures them, defines them, neurotic about knowing. Can it meet the reality which is bigger than its own capacities? It cannot know this, but it can be part of this. It can be just part of this magnificence. It is not being destroyed by this. It is part of this. It is integral part. But can it stop this neurotic movement of trying to be in control of something, defining, knowing? Can it see that it is already happening without its aid? It is free from its interpretations already.
I feel like it's like an endless loop somehow.
Who is in the loop? Can you just be aware of this one? Can mind be aware of itself being in the loop? Where does the loop start from? Just let it investigate. There is already an I that is looking, that is in this loop of looking, of finding something, of understanding something. But it is ignoring itself. You see, when this is seen, then it is dissolving, naturally. naturally mind becomes silent when it is seen, when mind is seen. It is seeing itself as what it truly is. It's just a thought. Then this whole weight drops naturally, not because it tries to, just naturally by that very seeing.
I can see a thought, but I can't. Like, it's not the,
Who is the one that sees the
Yeah,
thought, you see?
not the thought, but I don't see it as that.
But you see, it's already speaking itself now. You see, you say, I cannot see the thought.
Yeah.
Who is this I that cannot see the thought? Can you just look at it? Can this I look at itself? You see, it's already creating itself behind any experience. It doesn't mean that it's not possible to see. It just needs to be carefully investigated. The one that behind every movement, that owns every movement. I see, I understand, I think. If you explore your motives, then just look at what is the motive for looking now. Why are you looking?
Why am I looking?
Yes, why are you looking?
It's whatever.
Yes, why? Why are you looking? Are you looking to achieve something through the looking? Is the mind wanting something, some prize for this?
I think so.
Yes, you see, then that's why it keeps itself, you see. It is not pure looking, that's what is necessary, just pure awareness of this very phenomenon of this appearance of the I. Now, when the I is interested in anything, naturally it will keep itself. So all these motives, like we spoke before, they have to be exposed. So you may think, yes, I'm looking, but basically you investigate and you see you're looking to achieve something.
So
Mind is looking to have some kind of nice experience, maybe some spiritual experience, maybe to have some relaxation, maybe anything, or just again to stop suffering. You see, this, let it be clear, let it be come to the surface. Then, if there is sincerity, then all of these motives are seen, and this pure seeing can take place without motive. It is no longer for anything to happen after. So mind has it is ready to be disposed in the seeing, you can say, be dissolved in the seeing. You see? It is that maturity of mind that is necessary. A mind that is actually ready to see the truth of itself no matter what. Not to gain anything, because if it wants to gain anything, it will keep itself. Because it wants to enjoy this gaining. So it's always important to investigate those motives. Why are we here? Why are we in satsang? Why are we trying to see? Why are we looking? Why are we observing? Why are we looking for anything? Because you see, this is the final station, we can say, for the mind. It is to see what it is. It is the last thing it will do. It is only after it is free from all other desires. If there is any other motive, it will not be ready to see itself, because seeing itself means dying to all other things that may happen to it as the experiencer. So as long as there is the desire to experience anything, any kind of fulfillment, anything, it will not be ready to jump into this seeing in which it actually dissolves as the seer. It doesn't dissolve truly, but it dissolves as the seer, as the looker, as the observer, as the center.